Hi, everyone. Welcome to Learned Wired. I'm Emma Shorts, your co-host.
Hey guys, I'm your other co-host, Megan Francis.
And so it's Alyssa Dalia, your favorite co-host.
You said you're the favorite.
I'm always the favorite.
Anyways, guys, I hope you're all having a wonderful morning so far.
Yeah, it's going great.
Same, and I didn't forget my caffeine this time, a good old iced coffee.
I have a nice coffee for today as well.
I got my famous peach Red Bull on my way in.
Well, isn't this just a great Friday?
Especially with a 3-day weekend coming up.
Speaking of which, we have Columbus Day coming up this Monday, don't we?
We do, which is actually what we'll be discussing in today's episode.
Exactly. Also, I just wanted to make a warm welcome to any new listeners out there. We are Learned Wired, a podcast where we, caffeine addicts, reminisce on our old school days and look at what's being taught today and try to find better ways to better improve that from a different perspective.
As Alyssa likes to say, we like to make sure we are learning wired.
That's far from true. As Megan likes to say, wired is programming our brains to look at things in a new way.
I've never said that.
All the time.
No, I've never said it.
We'll be looking at a historical figure that we all learned about in elementary school, Christopher Columbus.
Ah, yes, the amazing explorer Christopher Columbus. Or so that's what history wants us to believe.
We were all talking about the other day about elementary school and things we did in class that would be problematic today. As we were talking, we all realized we did the same thing when learning about Christopher Columbus. Alyssa, do you mind sharing the things you remember telling me yesterday?
Yeah, it's actually really crazy looking back on it now. I remember learning about Christopher Columbus and what an amazing guy he was in first grade. Then the class was split in half. Half of us cut out feathers and put them in our hair, and we pretended to be Native Americans. While the other half of the class pretended to be Spaniards and cut out explorer hats. Now that I'm in college and I've learned so much about Columbus, this activity really shocks me now.
That's crazy now that we look back on it. It's weird to have children dress up as natives and explorers once you're learning history at that age.
It makes you wonder, why are we still teaching about Columbus in schools today? I feel like I didn't even know the truth about him until I was in college.
I've actually thought about that a lot. I've been looking into what is still being taught about him in schools today, and the things I found are really shocking. I found this really great article by Shawn Ledston, a journalist for the News and Record. Her article, Columbus's Discovery Perpetuated in Textbooks / Native Americans Here First, goes through textbook quotes about Christopher Columbus from elementary school to high school.
That's interesting.
Ledston quotes the 5th grade textbook used in Guilford County schools devotes 4 paragraphs to Columbus's voyage. It portrays Columbus as a tragic figure whose explorations brought Europe into contact with North America, but who never found the western route to Asia he sought.
Wow, they really are trying to paint him as the tragic hero.
I know. Ledston is simply pointing out what is still happening in textbooks that are being used in schools today. I think that is insane that we are still sugarcoating the things that Christopher Columbus was doing. She also looks at a quote from a textbook from a high school. The 11th grade advanced placement textbook used in High Point schools devotes 3 paragraphs to Columbus' voyage. It portrays him as one of the most successful failures in history who never found the eastern route to Asia he sought and who stubbornly insisted until his death that he had landed in Indies. In fact, he had landed in the Bahamas.
So they're still making out to be a good guy in high school, too?
Yeah, personally, until I got into college, I genuinely believed that Christopher Columbus was a great guy.
I always felt like he was a little fishy.
Honestly, I was shocked to learn what I did about him in college. Just look at this quote from Columbus and the 4 Voyages. As I've already said, they are the most timorous people in the world. In fact, the men that I have left there would be enough to destroy the whole land and the islands. Holds no dangers for them as long as they maintain discipline.
That's awful. From the very beginning, he knew how vulnerable these people were and still caused so much damage and suffering to the Native Americans.
Exactly. He was a bad person even by the standards of the 1400s, yet we are still teaching that he's a good person in school. I'm curious to what you guys knew about him before college.
Honestly, I only knew what we learned in elementary school. I don't know why we didn't learn this.
I only knew that his voyages would lead to the spread of diseases that would kill off the Tano population.
See, it's crazy what little we knew about him before college, and we are English majors who took classes that exposed us to this information. I have friends who are about to graduate who still don't know the type of person that Christopher Columbus is.
Same here. I was talking to my dad about what I learned about Christopher Columbus, and he ranted about how the American education system is corrupting us. It's weird how attached they are to their idea of Columbus.
Here, listen to this clip from this YouTube video I found called Christopher Columbus Educational Video for Kids.
Which was where we were heading to. It was a complete accident that we arrived at this new continent. But hard work and sacrifice always gives you rewards. After the first trip, I returned to America another 3 times. And I brought back to Spain unknown products in Europe such as tomatoes, corn, potatoes, and cacao. Yummy. I also took from Spain to America food and animals which they hadn't even heard of, such as horses, sheep, pigs, onions, and wheat. Well, this is my story, friends. Now you know why I, Admiral Christopher Columbus, am so famous. But before
Hard work and sacrifice always gives you rewards.
Yeah, that seems a little tone deaf.
Exactly, and this isn't an educational YouTube video about Christopher Columbus intended for children, and all they can focus on is what he brought to America and what he brought back to Spain. They build him up to be such an amazing man, but in reality, he really wasn't. To close off this section, I'm going to leave us with another quote from our Columbus and the Four Voyages. They should be good servants and very intelligent, for I've observed that they soon repeat anything that is said to them, and I believe they would easily be made Christians. We should not be teaching about Christopher Columbus like he's a hero with all the evidence we have about him being such a horrible person.
Especially when he wrote in his journals that he believed that the natives would be great servants. It's like he always intended to conquer them.
I wonder why we're still teaching about this despite all the evidence that he's the worst person ever.
I've actually been looking into the reasons why we teach about Columbus. After the Revolutionary War, the United States of America needed a founding myth unconnected to Britain. That's where Christopher Columbus came in. Christopher Columbus was a founding myth that appealed to U.S. citizens, as Columbus was painted as a sympathetic character compared to the Spanish monarchy in a book I read. The legacy of Christopher Columbus in the Americas, New Nations, and a Transatlantic Discourse of an Empire talks about his impact as a national symbol.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I had no clue it went back that far.
It does. Columbus connected the idea of the Old World to the New World with his journey from Spain to the New World. The book expressed this idea as people saw the British Empire was waning and that the American Empire could take its place. Columbus became associated with the American Empire. He was tied to the idea of colonization and conquest, which allowed the American Empire to be connected with the right to colonize. Columbus became a symbol of democracy and anti-monarchy.
But why would they choose someone who is the opposite of the ideals of democracy?
To be honest, it is strange that they chose him. They couldn't have chosen someone that is so different. It's even crazier considering that Columbus didn't even land in the modern-day U.S. You might be wondering why we teach about Columbus if he couldn't actually land there. Columbus's 4 journeys to the New World was important for other reasons. According to History Crunch, he was the first recorded European explorer to arrive within that area. His letter about the New World would lead to other people to decide to explore it as well.
I can sort of understand why he was important.
I suppose I can.
Well, his second journey to the New World resulted in the Columbian Exchange. The Columbian Exchange was an exchange between the Old World and the New World. This exchange would bring goods such as plants and seeds and introduce them to the New World where they didn't already exist. The Columbian Exchange altered the lives on both sides of the Atlantic Ocean. Bartholomew de la Casas.
You mean Bartolome de la Casas?
I can't pronounce names.
That's kind of true.
Anyways, he had said that Columbus was the first to open the gates of that ocean, which had been closed for so many thousands of years before. It was he who gave the light by which all others might see how to discover. His discovery changed the lives of both Europeans and the people of the Americas. New plants and animals crossed the ocean. Millions of people migrated. New empires rose and fell. New countries and cultures began.
You know, I was today years old when I realized that the Columbian Exchange was actually connected to Christopher Columbus, despite the name.
Same, dude. Our textbooks completely left that out.
You know, what's even crazier is that people were cargo in the Columbian Exchange. Columbus enslaved and exploited the indigenous people that lived where he had traveled. In only 4 years after his arrival on Hispaniola, the indigenous population had been reduced by over half their population. Columbus also treated his own people unfairly to the point where they rebelled against his rule as the governor of Hispaniola. Columbus would then be arrested and sent back to Spain in chains.
I'm not gonna lie. The more I learn about Columbus, the less I like about him.
Not to mention, Columbus found the New World by accident.
Of course he did.
He had been searching for a trade route to the Indies instead.
It's crazy that we're still being taught that Columbus was a person worthy of being called a hero. I wonder what we can do differently, or if there are things that we can do to help change this problem.
As you already know, many generations in America have been taught an inaccurate description of Columbus, and it can be quite difficult to introduce the truth.
Clearly.
It may be difficult, but is it impossible?
No, definitely not impossible. There are many ways to introduce the truth about Christopher Columbus, especially in an academic setting. One of the first ways we can fix this error is by teaching the younger generation the true story of Christopher Columbus's voyage to the New World. This would mean changing the curriculum for elementary schools and giving teachers resources that will aid them in teaching Columbus's true journey.
What sorts of resources would be beneficial to elementary school teachers?
Well, a very common method of teaching in today's schooling is through the showing of educational YouTube videos. I found a video by Learn Bright that discusses the life of Christopher Columbus in a way that is okay for kids to hear. Here's a small clip from the video.
Columbus and his men weren't very nice to them. Some of what Columbus wrote about the native people in his diaries is very sad and wrong. In one entry, he said that he thought the people would make fine servants. Many of the native people were mistreated and enslaved by Columbus and his crew. Many others got very sick from diseases that the Europeans brought with them on their journeys. Sadly, Columbus and his journeys had mostly negative effects on the people who already lived in the places he visited.
In the clip, it shows how though it censors some of the details Columbus has done to the Native Americans, it still doesn't glorify him, and it reveals the horrible action he has done.
That's actually super interesting. We should definitely be making more kid-friendly resources to talk about Christopher Columbus, but without glorifying him.
Yeah, teaching about him isn't wrong. It's how we glorify him.
Exactly. And after reading the 4 voyages of Christopher Columbus, it is important that we not only learn the truth of his voyage, but also the history of the Native American and what was done to them. I remember listening to a CBS Morning podcast episode called Indigenous Peoples Day, the case to rename Christopher Columbus.
Oh, right. Weren't they interviewing the director of UCLA's American Indian Studies?
Shannon Speed?
Yeah, Shannon Speed. But on the episode, they were discussing the impact Columbus has on the Native Americans and how little we are taught about their history. Speed, being a professor herself, said, "There is no education about Native Americans at all in K-12 education in most states. And I feel that if the schools start to incorporate the natives' history, it'll not only aid in teaching the truth about Columbus,
but also allow students to gain more information about our land."
Exactly.
So how do you even reteach the history of Columbus to students who have already learned the glorified version?
Well, there's a variety of methods. In an article I read, a teacher wrote about a unit she taught where she revealed the true side of Columbus' story and the people that were harmed. Throughout the school year, she asked her students to always consider the alternative and use this way of thinking to introduce Columbus. By asking her students to consider the alternative side of the story, they were able to conduct research and discover the true story of Columbus themselves.
That's really smart, and I suppose it also teaches her students an even bigger lesson of not believing in everything you read.
That's true. It shows the importance of researching information for yourself.
It's definitely beneficial, but that's just one of the many ways schools can begin reteaching the history of Christopher Columbus. For much older students, many of the teachers can assign their students to read the 4 voyages of Christopher Columbus. It'll be a good way to completely take away the glorified heroic persona they've been taught and know truly what occurred.
What a guy Columbus was.
What a guy indeed.
I cannot believe that we used to wear feathers in our hair and run around. Schools definitely need to do better.
Yeah, that was very insensitive of them, and it's crazy knowing the actual truth about him and everything that he's done.
Man, I wish that schools would stop teaching about the glorified version of the man that killed off people and sold them.
I agree. Teaching kids a false version of history is not doing anybody favors.
I think my biggest takeaway from today's episode is that Columbus should still be taught in school. Like, he did do important things, and
That's
he
true.
did help create part of our history.
That is true.
But it should be done in a way that he isn't created into a hero.
I'm sure many teachers are definitely transitioning to teaching Columbus this true story, and hopefully our listeners today who work in education are going to and start teaching about the real journey of what happened.
That's right. I really want to see what our listeners think about Columbus.
Me too. To all our amazing listeners today, leave a comment below with your thoughts on Columbus. Why do you think the glorified version of Columbus is still being taught today?
Thank you guys all for listening to this week's episode, and make sure to also comment what you guys want to hear about next week.
Definitely. I want to know what you guys want us to speak about and think about and everything.
We are open to literally anything.
If you want us to talk
Literally.
about absolutely anything, we are here to talk about it. If you want to talk about Marco Polo, we definitely will.
Genghis Khan?
Possibly.
Ibn Fanlan?
Maybe.
Maybe.
Maybe. Okay, thank you all for joining in. We can't wait to see you guys next week, and we have some exciting news as well. So, in that,
All right.
thank you for joining Learn Wired. See you next
Thanks.
week. Bye.